And if you find yourself constantly becoming distracted, you might like to introduce labeling or noting to help get some space. Or if you prefer, you may even prefer to go into the body and anchor yourself in the rhythm of the breath. Have that as your main object, and then a little bit in the corner of your mind, observe your thoughts and emotions. So in this Shamatha practice, we're cultivating these three qualities of relaxation, stability, clarity. And remember, the foundation there is relaxation. So just constantly keep an eye on that, because there can be a tendency to tighten over time. Just to really relaxing the body, relaxing the mind, deeper and deeper and deeper. The more relaxed we are in the body and the mind, the better it's going to be developing stability, clarity. And in this retreat, we're using three particular objects: the breath, the mind, and resting in awareness. And the general recommendation is then find an object that works best for you and use that object. And we can use that all the way to Shamatha. And we'll be looking at the stages to Shamatha this evening, starting to in this diagram. But remember, there was another option that Alan Wallace presented in his book. And he was generally recommending to start with the breath, to get to about stage 4, and by stage 4 your mind is more stable and clear. Then to switch to observing the mind for the next 3 or 4 stages, and then the last couple of stages just switching to resting in awareness. So this is one option that he was saying is suitable.
And the stages here?
Sorry?
You mean the stages?
Yeah, stages here, yeah. Which we're going to start to look at this evening. We haven't looked at that yet, that's coming this evening. And the Shamatha practice is very important, of course, for all other practices. And unfortunately, the Shamatha practice gets often a little bit left out in many of the modern day Buddhist traditions that we see. So I think it's something very important. The more we practice, the better, easier it will be to practice Vipassana and the other practices as well. So moving on to today's practice, sometimes called stillness in motion. And for this, I'd like to read from this text. I think I quoted already from Dujung Linpa, modern day 19th century Dzogchen master, Tibetan Dzogchen master. He says, "Loosely relax and watch your thoughts from afar, clearly observing whatever arises. That which observes is called mindfulness. That which is observed is called movement." So that's the practice from the day before yesterday, just observing the mind and all of our thoughts and so forth. And then he says, and resting in that state is called stillness. So that's the practice from yesterday, just resting in that stillness of awareness. And then he says, identify them as such and meditate, which means to identify stillness and movement individually and meditate, meaning to, whilst resting in that stillness of awareness, observe the movements of the mind. And that's what we're going to be doing now. And then just one more point, he says then, if you meditate earnestly, stable meditative experiences of the bliss, luminosity and non-conceptuality of Shamatha will arise in your mind stream. So of course this is a Shamatha practice, and the goal is to cultivate a calm, clear, focused mind. So what we're going to do now in the meditation is we will first start, and again we'll do 2 15-minute sessions with a little 2-minute break. But what we'll do, of course, preparation is normal, preparing body and mind. But then we'll start by resting in stillness for some minutes, just to sort of ground ourselves in that stillness. And then, whilst resting in that stillness, we'll start to observe the movements of the mind. And remember, the movements of the mind here is, in this practice, only mental events. So, like the practice from the day before yesterday, in this practice, we're not paying attention to any sounds, sensations, and so forth. Let them be there, we're not interested in those. We're only interested in mental events, thoughts, emotions, mental images and memories, and so forth. And in this practice, then, whilst resting in stillness, observing the movements of the mind, if you find that you're getting caught up in these thoughts and emotions and so forth, then what I'd recommend is simply go back and anchor in that stillness. So just go back for another minute or two until in rest in awareness, just resting in the stillness of awareness until you find yourself more relaxed and stable. And then once you find yourself in that state, then once again, whilst resting in that state, start to observe the movements of the mind. So that's what we're going to do now. We're going to do 2 15-minute sessions with a 2-minute break, and in each one we'll start with a few minutes of resting in stillness first, and then from that state start to observe the movements of the mind. Okay? So let's do that practice. Setting the body into a state of relaxation, stillness, and vigilance. And allowing the mind to come to rest in the present moment. And simply becoming aware of the rhythm of the breath. With your eyes at least partially open, resting your gaze in the space in front of you. Simply release all appearances, allowing the mind to come to rest. Resting in awareness itself. Resting in that stillness of awareness. Open and spacious. Now, whilst resting in that stillness of awareness, start to become aware of the movements of the mind. Observing thoughts, emotions, and other mental events as they arise and pass. If you're finding that you're getting caught up in your thoughts and emotions and so forth, then simply go back and rest in stillness of awareness. Ground yourself there. And once you're resting, then once again start to observe the movements of the mind. And if you're simply completely caught up in your thoughts and emotions, then go back and anchor yourself in the rhythm of the breath. Have that as your main object. And then just a little bit in the corner of your mind, observe your thoughts and emotions. to stretch your legs, you can do that now quietly.